awaken in silence, though not the kind of silence one finds in empty fields or forest paths. This silence is heavy, cultivated, wrapped in the thick stone walls of a royal palace. The dawn has barely touched the horizon, yet your duty calls before the light of day filters through the tall windows. For you are the palace librarian, and within your care rest centuries of written memory, chronicles, letters, secrets, even whispers pressed into parchment by hands that no longer exist. The palace itself seems to breathe around you. Each morning begins with the creak of wooden floors beneath velvet carpets, with the faint clatter of servants preparing their trays of copper cups and polished silver spoons. Somewhere down the hall, the guards shuffle in their armor, their yawns echoing against marble columns. Yet here, in the vaulted chambers of the library, there is nothing but stillness. The keys at your side are your only companions. Long, iron-forged, heavy in your pocket, they chime softly with each step you take. Each key belongs to a door, and each door hides shelves of fragile treasures. Some shelves sag under the weight of leather-bound tomes, while others gleam with scrolls tied in faded ribbon. The air smells of old ink and candle wax, the perfume of forgotten knowledge. You unlock the first chamber. Dust greets you like an old friend, swirling lazily in the first shafts of light that crawl through the narrow windows. You run a finger along the spines of books, titles pressed in gold, now flaking with age. Here lies the kingdom's entire genealogy. Names upon names, drawn like branches on a tree that roots deep into time. Kings, queens, and bastards alike, all recorded with care. You know them as if they were family, though most are long gone. Their triumphs and scandals lie between these pages, whispered only to you. The palace librarian is not simply a keeper of books. You are a keeper of memory. Monarchs may rule by sword, but their legacies rest in ink. The chronicles you guard are more powerful than steel. They decide how the future will remember the past. That power weighs heavily on you, though few in the palace realize it. You remember the day you were chosen? You were young then, barely more than an apprentice in the city's scriptorium, your hands stained with ink, your eyes half blind from candlelight. A summons came, sealed with the royal crest. At first, you thought it a mistake. Why would the palace require you, a humble scholar? Yet they did, and when you crossed the gilded gates for the first time, your life as you knew it was gone. You were no longer a mere reader. You had become the guardian of history itself. Morning stretches into midday, and already your duties begin to unfold. Messengers arrive, carrying scrolls from distant provinces. Each scroll tells of taxes, trade, disputes, battles along the border. They hand them to you with little care, as though they were bundles of cloth rather than the voice of the realm. You catalog each one, seal it, and store it with precision. A misplaced scroll is no small matter. It could mean the loss of truth itself. You know that not all truths are welcome in the palace. Some documents are too dangerous, their words like sparks on dry wood. A general's secret letter criticizing the king. A record of famine mismanaged by ministers. A prophecy penned by a monk that hints at the downfall of the dynasty. You keep them hidden in the darkest corner of the archives, behind a door whose key never leaves your neck. You guard them not because the world is ready to read them, but because one day, when the time is right, they will speak again. Afternoon light spills through the high windows. The marble floors glow as though polished by the sun itself. Courtiers wander into the library, their robes whispering against the floor. Some come out of genuine interest, tracing their fingers along illuminated manuscripts. Others come to impress, borrowing books they will never read. You watch them closely. No volume leaves your sight without a record. The loss of a single book is as grave as the loss of a crown jewel, and then there are the royals themselves. Princes who demand tales of their ancestors' queens who ask for poetry to ease their nights, and kings who summon you for records of past wars as though the victories of the dead could help them win their battles today. You bow, you obey, but inside you know that the knowledge you hold outlives their fleeting reigns. By evening, the library grows quiet once more. The courtiers leave, the doors close, and the candles burn lower. You find yourself alone again among your companions, the books. You open one at random, perhaps a chronicle of a forgotten campaign. where knights marched into foreign lands and never returned. You read slowly, savoring the words as if they were wine. Each page is a voice speaking across centuries, and you, the librarian, are the only listener. As the night settles, the palace falls into stillness. The banquet hall's empty, the musicians silence their lutes, and only the occasional torch flickers in the corridors. You lock the chambers once again, keys clinking in the silence. You pause, as you always do, at the final door, the one that hides the forbidden texts. You press your hand against the wood. The secrets within seem to pulse faintly, alive, restless. You whisper to them, promising that you will keep them safe a little longer. You retire to your modest chamber in the upper floor of the library. It is not luxurious, yet it smells of paper and ink, and that is enough. Before sleep takes you, you gaze out the window at the palace gardens bathed in moonlight. Somewhere in the halls below, kings and queens dream of power, but here, in your quiet refuge, you dream of words. And so another day ends in the life of the palace librarian, a day like countless before it, a day like countless to come. But as you drift into slumber, one thought lingers in your mind. History is alive, and it sleeps beneath your watch. One day, it may awaken. The palace wakes long before the city outside its gates. While commoners stir to the sound of roosters and the clang of market stalls, the palace begins with the ring of bells and the shuffle of servants carrying buckets of water up endless staircases. You hear it faintly, carried through the high windows of your library. Yet here the sound is muffled, softened by walls lined with knowledge. Today begins not with dusting the tomes or cataloging scrolls, but with an urgent summons. A page arrives at your door before dawn, his breath fogging in the cold air. He holds out a sealed parchment bearing the royal crest. "The king requests the chronicles of the 5th dynasty," he says, bowing low. You know immediately what this means. The king has been restless. Rumors ripple through the halls that war may be near, a border dispute, a matter of pride. Whenever conflict looms, the monarch turns to the past, searching for victories carved into parchment, as though the strategies of long-dead generals might be summoned back into life. You unlock the archives, your hand trembling slightly as the iron key turns in the lock. The chamber smells different than the others. This is where the oldest chronicles are kept, some written so long ago that the ink has faded to a whisper. You retrieve the requested volume, its cover stiff, its edges gnawed by centuries. When you return, the page is waiting anxiously, shifting from foot to foot. He takes the book with both hands, as if carrying a relic. You watch him go, and a question lingers. Will this ancient chronicle fuel another war? Once the chamber is locked again, you turn to your morning rituals. The shelves must be inspected, each book accounted for. You move methodically, your eyes scanning titles you know by heart. A misplaced volume is a breach of trust, yet you find comfort in this routine. Every morning is a conversation with the dead. Each book is a voice, and you are the one who ensures those voices remain clear. Soon after, the doors open again, this time to a figure who makes you straighten your back and bow deeply. The queen herself has entered. She rarely comes to the library, preferring gardens and music halls, but today her eyes carry a strange urgency. She approaches without hesitation, her silken robes whispering against the stone floor. "I require poetry," she says, her voice low but commanding. Something old, something that speaks of love beyond duty. You guide her to the chamber of verse, a room perfumed with wax and pressed flowers where poems rest like fragile birds in their cages. You offer her a manuscript written by a long-forgotten court poet, one whose verses once caused scandal for being too tender, too personal. The queen takes it gently, as though holding a secret. She does not read aloud, but you see her lips move over the words, her eyes clouding with something between sorrow and longing. Without another word, she leaves, clutching the book as if it were a talisman. These are the moments when you remember. The library is not simply a place of history. It is a place of escape. Kings come here for strategies, queens for solace, princes for tales of glory, and princesses for dreams of other worlds. Each seeks something different, but all find their reflection in the words of the past. As noon arrives, the air in the library grows warmer, carrying with it the faint scents of roasted meats and spiced wine from the banquet hall. Courtiers wander in, chattering more than reading. One asks you for a romance to impress a lady. Another demands a book of astronomy so he might sound learned at supper. They do not truly care for the knowledge within, but you oblige them nonetheless, for that too is your duty. Still, when they leave, you carefully note their borrowings, for experience has taught you that books borrowed from vanity rarely return unscathed. And then comes a visitor unlike the others. A young scholar from the university, pale and nervous, clutching a satchel of papers. He has been granted rare access by the council to consult the palace archives for his studies. You lead him to a desk, watching as his trembling hands leaf through ancient chronicles. His eyes widen with awe as though he has entered a sacred temple. For him, the words are not tools of power or ornaments of vanity. For him, they are truth itself. You feel a kinship in his reverence, a reminder of your own youth, when knowledge felt like a flame you could barely hold without being burned. Hours slip by. The scholar remains buried in manuscripts, the courtiers drift away, and the queen does not return. Afternoon fades into evening. The palace beyond the library grows lively, filled with music, laughter, and the clinking of goblets. Yet here, in the shadowed chambers, there is only the sound of turning pages. When the scholar finally departs, bowing low and thanking you profusely, you are once again alone. The silence returns, heavier now. You walk the aisles slowly, lantern in hand, letting the flickering light dance across the bindings. You pause often, running your fingers along the spines, whispering their titles like a prayer. But tonight, you linger at the Forbiddance Chamber. You unlock it carefully, pushing open the heavy door. Inside, the air is different, colder, as if the knowledge here resists being touched. Shelves hold documents too dangerous for daylight. Letters of betrayal, treaties broken in secret, accounts of executions hushed from public record. You leaf through one, a record of famine covered up by decree. The handwriting is hurried, the ink smudged as though the scribe feared being caught even as he wrote. You close it quickly. Some truths are too sharp, even for your hands. You lock the chamber once more, the iron key cold against your skin. Night settles. The palace above grows quieter, though muffled laughter still echoes faintly. You retreat to your chamber, but sleep does not come easily tonight. You lie awake, staring at the ceiling beams, your mind turning over what you have seen and heard. The king seeking war through the words of the past. The queen clutching poetry like a lifeline. The courtiers playing with knowledge as though it were a toy. The scholar bowing to it like an altar. And you, the one who holds it all together, the silent guardian. The thought both humbles you and chills you. For knowledge is a crown heavier than any gold, and its weight presses hardest in the quiet hours of night. The next morning dawns beneath a heavy sky. The palace gardens shimmer with dew, but the clouds promise rain. You hear it in the distance as you move through the corridors, a low rumble that rolls across the stones like a warning. Yet within the library, the weather is irrelevant. The books remain still, untouched by storms, their silence deeper than thunder. You begin your day as always, unlocking the chambers one by one. The keys turn with familiar resistance, the doors creak as if sighing awake. The air is cool and dry, a carefully guarded climate to preserve the parchments. But today you notice something amiss. On one of the shelves, a volume is out of place. Your breath catches. No one but you should have been here after the doors were locked. The book, a volume of royal correspondence from the previous century, lies at an angle, slightly pulled from its row. You reach for it cautiously, as though it might bite. Inside, the pages flutter as if they were disturbed only moments ago. You make a note in your ledger, your quill scratching nervously. Someone has been here. Someone has touched what should not be touched. Before you can ponder further, the door opens again. A guard enters, broad-shouldered and armored, his helmet tucked under one arm. He is not a regular visitor to the library. His eyes move across the shelves with suspicion rather than curiosity. The king requests that you prepare the records of the border provinces, he says curtly. He wants them ready before the council convenes. You nod, bowing slightly, though your thoughts remain on the displaced book. You fetch the requested documents, stacks of scrolls tied in faded cords. They contain reports of harvest yields, tax levies, and the movements of border towns. To most, they would seem dull, lifeless. but you know they are more dangerous than swords. A single line in a ledger can become the excuse for a campaign, the justification for bloodshed. As the guard takes the bundles, he lingers. His gaze rests on the shelves of the Forbidden's chamber, though the door remains locked. Strange place, he mutters. So many secrets in one room. Then he leaves, his boots echoing down the corridor. The rain begins to fall outside, a soft patter at first, then heavier, drumming against the tall windows. The sound fills the library, blending with the rustle of parchment and the faint crackle of the candles. You find yourself unsettled. The displaced book, the guard's stare, the king's hunger for records of the provinces. And then, as if summoned by your unease, another visitor arrives. The royal scribe. He is an older man, stooped from years of bending over parchment, his fingers permanently stained with ink. He greets you warmly, his voice low and soothing, as though every word were a secret. I come to deliver the minutes of yesterday's council, he says, placing a sealed scroll on your desk. His eyes, however, linger on you. Tell me, librarian, have you ever thought of what power lies in these shelves? You hesitate. You know well what he means, but you have never spoken it aloud. He leans closer. History is written by ink, not by kings. Without us, their victories are forgotten. Without us, their lineage fades. Do you not see? We shape the memory of the realm. His words chill you. For they echo the thoughts that haunt your sleepless nights. Yet coming from another's lips, they sound dangerous, even treasonous. You nod politely, saying nothing more. He smiles faintly, as though satisfied with your silence, and departs. The afternoon is spent in quiet work. You catalog new acquisitions, a shipment of manuscripts copied by monks from a distant monastery, their covers still smelling of beeswax and pine resin. You admire the artistry of their letters, the delicate flourishes that curl like vines. Such beauty, created in silence, carried across mountains, now resting in your care. You make detailed entries in your ledger, your quill moving steadily, the rain still tapping against the windows. But your thoughts are restless. You cannot shake the image of that displaced volume, nor the scribe's words whispered like a spark near dry parchment. You walk the aisles again, searching for other signs of intrusion. At first, all seems in order. Yet, as your lantern flickers across the bindings, you notice a faint smear of wax near the floor, as though a candle had been carried here at night. You crouch, running your fingers along the stone. The wax is real. Someone has entered after hours. Someone with a key or with the skill to bypass a lock. Your heart beats faster, the Forbidden's chamber, the secrets it holds. If anyone sought to alter them, to remove them, to use them, the entire kingdom's memory could shift overnight. By evening, the rain has slowed, leaving the air damp and heavy. The courtiers do not come today, preferring their banquets and music to the dreary weather. The library is yours alone once more. You lock the chambers carefully, lingering longer than usual at the Forbidden's door. You test the lock twice, then thrice. The iron feels cold, the key heavier than ever. In your chamber above, you sit by candlelight, staring at the ledger of entries. Every book borrowed, every scroll delivered, every visitor noted. It is a map of movements, a record of who touched history and when. Yet there are gaps, unexplained moments, missing lines. You wonder if your ledger itself might one day become a chronicle, and if so, will it tell the truth? Or will someone someday displace it as carelessly as that book on the shelf? Sleep comes fitfully. Dreams swirl of doors creaking open in the night, of voices whispering from pages, of crowns crumbling into dust. You wake before dawn, heart racing, as though the books themselves had been calling your name. For the first time, you feel it clearly. Being a palace librarian is not only about guarding knowledge. It is about guarding power. And someone, somewhere, has begun to test the locks. The next day begins not with peace, but with commotion. The palace is unsettled. You feel it even before you step into the library. Servants whisper in the corridors, guards hurry past with tighter grips on their spears, and the air tastes sharper like iron before a storm. When you arrive at the library doors, you notice something unusual. 2 guards stationed outside. This has never happened before. Their eyes follow you as you unlock the door, as though even you, the trusted keeper of knowledge, require watching. Inside, the shelves welcome you as always, their spines glowing faintly in the dawn light. Yet you sense something is wrong. Your steps echo louder, the silence heavier. You move quickly to the shelf where you found the displaced book yesterday. You run your hands along the bindings. Nothing seems out of order. Yet your instincts gnaw at you. Something has been touched. Soon the first visitor arrives. It is not a page nor a courtier, but a member of the king's council. His robes are lined with sable, his ring heavy with gems, his eyes sharp and calculating. He demands access to records of treaties signed during the last century, agreements with neighboring realms long since broken. You retrieve the volumes, though his presence makes you uneasy. He does not simply read. He scours as though searching for something specific, something hidden. His fingers tap restlessly against the parchment. At last, he snaps the book shut and hands it back without a word. Yet you notice his gaze drift to the forbidden's chamber before he departs. The suspicion grows heavier. Why now, after so many years of quiet guardianship, does the library suddenly draw so many hungry eyes? The king, the queen, the scribe, the counselor, all seeking different fragments of history, all probing the shelves as though the answers to their present struggles lie buried in the past. At midday, you are summoned to the throne room. This is rare, for librarians do not stand in royal halls. Their work is done in shadows, away from ceremony. Yet here you are, before the gilded dais, bowing to the king himself. His crown glitters in the torchlight, his expression stern. You guard the memory of this realm, he says, his voice heavy, resonant. I require assurance that no falsehood, no tampering, no theft has touched our chronicles. Enemies within are more dangerous than enemies without. Do you understand? You bow again, your throat dry. Yes, your majesty, his eyes narrow. See that you do? For if truth fails, so too does the kingdom. The words linger like a blade pressed against your neck. You are dismissed, and you return to your library shaken. The king's suspicion confirms what you already feared. Others have begun to pry, to tamper, to seek control of the very words you guard. The afternoon passes with uneasy quiet. You attend to your duties, copying records, mending torn pages, sharpening quills, yet your mind wanders. Each scratch of the quill feels like a heartbeat, each curl of ink like a vein of history flowing beneath your hand. You think again of the scribe's whispered words. History is written by ink, not by kings. As evening approaches, the library empties. The counselor does not return. The queen does not appear. No scholars request entry. The silence is thick, oppressive. You wander the aisles with lantern in hand, checking each chamber, each shelf, each lock. All seems secure. And then, as you pass the far corner near the forbidden door, you see it, another droplet of wax on the stone floor. Fresh, pale against the dark stone, your heart pounds. Someone has been here again. You crouch low, running your finger across it. It crumbles slightly, not from last night, but from this very day. Which means, while you were summoned to the throne room, while the king demanded your loyalty, someone entered your sanctuary. You rush to the forbidden's door. The lock appears untouched, the iron key still cold against your chest. Yet you cannot shake the feeling that someone has stood here, breathing the same air, hungering for the same secrets you guard. Night falls heavy. The palace grows dim, the feasting halls echoing with laughter far away. But in the library, the silence is sharp. You lock every chamber with care, triple-checking each latch. You retreat to your chamber above, but sleep does not come. The rain has ended, leaving the air heavy and close. Your candle flickers, throwing shadows across the beams. You sit at your desk, staring at the ledger once again. Each line of ink is steady, ordered, complete. Yet you know the truth. The ledger cannot tell you who walks the library in your absence, whose hands brush against forbidden spines, whose wax stains the stones. At last you take up your quill. You write a new page, hidden between the others, a secret ledger within the ledger. In it you record not only what is borrowed, but what you sense. The displaced book. The guard's stare, the counselor's restless fingers, the scribe's whispered truths, the droplets of wax. It is a record of unease, a chronicle of shadows. Perhaps one day it will matter. Perhaps one day, when the kingdom asks who betrayed its memory, your hidden ledger will answer. You blow out the candle. The darkness closes in. The library sleeps, but uneasily. And so do you? The morning breaks with a chill. Mist curls over the palace gardens, softening the marble statues and cloaking the fountains in ghostly veils. From your chamber window, you watch servants shuffle along the gravel paths, their torches glowing faintly in the fog. The world feels hushed, as though the entire palace is holding its breath. You descend into the library as always, keys jingling at your side. The guards posted at the door remain silent, statuesque, their expressions unreadable. You bow politely as you pass, but their eyes follow you, heavy as chains. Inside, the library greets you with familiar stillness, yet it feels different. Not peaceful, but watchful, as though the books themselves are aware of the prying eyes, the restless hands that have invaded their sanctuary. You walk slowly, letting your fingertips graze the spines. The bindings are cool beneath your touch, but the silence presses against your ears until it seems to hum. You open the first chamber. Scrolls rest neatly in their cubbyholes, tied with colored cords, each bundle representing a story, a decree, a voice of the past. But then, on the second shelf, you notice a faint tear in the ribbon of one scroll. You lift it carefully. The wax seal is cracked. Someone has read it. Your breath quickens. The scroll is a census of the border villages, nothing of great beauty but rich in detail. Names of families, numbers of livestock, records of taxes paid. In the wrong hands, it is more than information. It is a map of vulnerability. You roll it back carefully, securing it with fresh ribbon, but your hands shake as you place it back upon the shelf. As you do, the door opens. The young scholar from the university enters again, his satchel slung across his shoulder, his eyes bright with eagerness. He bows deeply, perhaps too deeply, and requests access to the annals of the Third Dynasty. You hesitate. The Third Dynasty is a time of upheaval, betrayals, usurpations, wars that bled the land dry. Why would a scholar need such records? You study his face. He looks nervous, but not deceitful. His hands tremble slightly as he unpacks his ink and paper. You may consult them here, you say at last, guiding him to a desk where the light falls gently across the wood. You place the volumes before him, but remain nearby, pretending to dust the shelves as you watch. He opens the book with reverence, eyes widening at the illuminated script. His quill scratches furiously, copying names, dates, decrees. You note the intensity of his work, but also the innocence in his expression. Perhaps he truly is only a student of history. Perhaps by midday, the scholar departs, bowing again and thanking you profusely. You watch him disappear into the fog, his satchel bulging with notes. You wonder, will those notes be read only by him, or by others whose eyes seek more than knowledge? The afternoon brings another visitor, the Queen. She glides into the library with less urgency than before, yet her gaze seems distant, troubled. She does not request poetry this time, but instead asks for letters written by queens of the past. Private letters, she specifies, her voice soft but firm. You hesitate. The correspondence of queens is delicate, filled with both tenderness and intrigue. Some letters hold nothing but lullabies to children or prayers to God, while others conceal conspiracies, desperate pleas, secret loves. You bow and fetch them. She reads silently, her fingers trembling slightly on the parchment. At last, she sighs, her eyes glistening. Even queens, she murmurs, are prisoners of ink. She does not explain. She closes the letters carefully, presses them to her chest, and leaves. Her words echo in your mind long after she is gone. Prisoners of ink. You wonder if you too are a prisoner, bound not by chains, but by the very knowledge you protect. Evening draws near. The fog lingers, heavy and unyielding. The library empties once again, leaving you alone with your unease. You take your lantern and make your rounds, checking each chamber, each lock. But when you reach the forbidden door, your heart lurches. The lock bears a faint scratch. Barely visible, but unmistakable. Someone has tried to force it. You press your palm against the cold iron, as though to shield it with your hand alone. The secrets within stir in your imagination, records of betrayal, hidden prophecies, scandals erased from public memory. If such knowledge escaped, the kingdom itself could fracture. You check the key around your neck, reassuring yourself that it has not been stolen. Yet the sight of that scratch burns in your mind. You whisper to the door, as you always do, "I will keep you safe." But tonight the words feel fragile, uncertain. In your chamber above, the candle burns low. You sit at your desk, adding another entry to your secret ledger, the census scroll disturbed, the scholar's intense study, the queen's sorrow, the scratch upon the forbidden's lock. You pause, staring at the words. A thought creeps into your mind, unbidden. Perhaps you are not the guardian, but the last obstacle. Perhaps those who seek the books do not fear the locks, but you, the candle gutters. The mist presses against the window, pale and thick. You close your eyes, but sleep does not come easily. In your dreams, doors creak open, scrolls unravel themselves, and voices from the past whisper in languages you do not know. You awaken before dawn, heart pounding, certain of one truth. The library is no longer only a sanctuary. It is a battlefield, and you stand alone upon its threshold. Every palace carries its own tensions, and though libraries seem like sanctuaries, they too can become battlegrounds. Not of swords, not of shields, but of ideas. As the librarian, you would quickly discover that knowledge has power and those who control it. Wield influence equal to generals and kings. Scrolls can start wars, manuscripts can end dynasties, and a single forbidden book can either free a people or condemn them. You, who hold the keys to this treasury, would find yourself at the center of unspoken rivalries. Priests would come, demanding that certain texts be locked away, claiming they threatened morality or faith. Philosophers would arrive soon after, insisting those same works must be preserved for truth and inquiry. Courtiers, sly and smooth-tongued, might quietly slip requests for manuscripts on poisons, on star reading, on matters they would never dare to confess to their king. Some would offer bribes, coins heavy with silver, or jewels small enough to be tucked into a sleeve. Others would threaten, "If this book is ever read aloud, it could be the end of your position, or your life." You would learn the subtle art of refusal. Never a direct no, for that could spark insult. Instead, you'd master the gentle deflection. That work is undergoing preservation. Or, it is written in a language not yet translated. Or, most effective of all, I fear His Majesty himself has taken an interest in it. Few would dare challenge the king's supposed reading habits, but secrecy weighs heavy. Imagine standing alone at night in a chamber lit only by lanterns, and staring at shelves that contain not just words but fire. For within these bindings lie the heresies that kingdoms banned, the instructions for weapons outlawed, the love poems that could scandalize courts, the histories that contradict the king's official version. You, more than anyone, would know that history is not truth, it is decision. Which manuscripts are copied, which are hidden, which are burned. And yet you would also know that librarians leave traces. A book once catalogued, even if hidden, always whispers of its existence. A missing entry in your records might rouse suspicion. A book declared destroyed might resurface, centuries later, with your marginalia still in the margins. In your careful script, you would write notes that could outlast dynasties, shaping how future historians interpret your king, your court, your world. This power would not be without its dangers. More than once, you might be summoned in the dead of night, dragged half awake by guards and forced to answer to some accusation. Did you reveal to Lord X the contents of the herbal manuscripts? Who gave you permission to allow Lady Y into the astronomy hall? Always you would defend yourself with calm, quiet words, for the palace librarian must never appear shaken. And still, enemies would lurk. Perhaps another scribe covets your post. Perhaps a rival court faction sees the library as a weapon. One rumor, one misplaced book, could undo you. Thus, paranoia would creep into your daily life. You would hide personal journals in false bindings. You would arrange shelves not only by subject, but by secrecy texts the king trusts openly, texts to be shown with care, and texts never to be revealed at all. The wars of knowledge are not bloody, but they scar just the same. You would feel the constant strain of balance, to serve truth or to serve power, to protect wisdom or to obey command. A weak librarian bows to politics. A strong one endures quietly, preserving what must be preserved, until the day when truth can breathe again. Centuries later, historians would wonder why certain texts survived while others vanished. They would write essays, give lectures, build reputations on the mystery of lost works. And yet they would never know it was you, an anxious palace librarian, sitting by candlelight, weighing danger against duty, who decided which words endured. The silent wars you fought left no battlefield, no monument, no grave, but they shaped the world all the same. Step into the rarest chamber of the palace library, and you will find yourself among objects so exquisite they scarcely seem real. Here, words are no longer mere ink scratched upon parchment, they are transformed into treasures. Some manuscripts are written in gold leaf, the letters themselves glowing in the flickering torchlight. Others are bound in velvet, with covers studded in gems, sapphires, and rubies that once decorated crowns or reliquaries. There are scrolls wound on ivory rods, parchment dyed deep purple to mark imperial privilege, and books so enormous they require 2 attendants to lift them onto a table. You, as the librarian, would know each one not only by sight, but by smell, by weight, by the whisper of its pages. You could tell the difference between calfskin vellum and papyrus by the faintest touch. You would recognize the musk of cedar chests used to ward off moths, the bitter sharpness of oak gall ink, the sweet resinous scent of leather bindings polished with beeswax. These books are not possessions. They are living presences, breathing out the craft of centuries. And yet, their beauty would make them dangerous. Courtiers would long to display them, not for wisdom, but for pride. Imagine a banquet where a duke insists on showing a golden illuminated psalter at his table, as though it were a jewel-studded centerpiece. Imagine a foreign ambassador begging to carry a single leaf back to his homeland as proof of your king's magnificence. Each request is a risk, for one stolen folio, one damaged manuscript would haunt you forever. So you would become not only a keeper of words, but a guardian of treasure. Keys would hang from your belt, heavy and numerous, unlocking iron-bound chests and barred cabinets. Your hands would tremble slightly when opening them, not from weakness, but from awe. For within, you might find books no other living soul has touched for 100 years. There are whispered stories that some manuscripts are cursed, a Bible bound in human skin. A medical text so poisonous that to touch its pages with bare fingers brings fever. An astrologer's chart that predicts the death of the very king who owns it. Whether true or not, you would handle each book with the same reverence priests reserve for relics. For to the palace librarian, a manuscript is both object and oracle. At night, when silence wraps the palace, you would sometimes take one down, not the forbidden ones, never those, but a book of poems, perhaps, or a chronicle of lands you will never see. You would spread it on your desk and feel the shimmer of centuries flow through you. The poet, long dead, speaks again. The monk who illuminated the pages with curling vines and winged beasts lives again in your candlelight. And you, humble though you are, become part of this chain, reader, keeper, preserver, but even treasures decay. Gold flakes, parchment cracks, bindings rot. You would employ every trick you know, pressing leaves between polished boards to flatten them, rubbing bindings with oil to soften them, chasing silverfish from corners with crushed herbs. Still, you would know the truth time is the one thief no key can stop. Perhaps that is why kings invest so much pride in their jeweled books. They see them as a promise of permanence, a monument of ink and gold to outlast wars and dynasties. And yet even emperors fade. You, the librarian, would understand this more deeply than anyone. That beauty does not prevent loss, it only delays it. There will be days when ambassadors tour the library and gasp at its wealth. Surely this, they whisper, is greater than any vault of coins. They are right. Knowledge is the rarest treasure, for it multiplies when shared, yet can vanish when neglected. You would bow politely, accepting their awe, but inside you would carry a secret heavier than gold, that you are the true guardian, the one upon whose quiet care the survival of an empire's memory depends. And when, years later, a manuscript leaves your hands for the last time, perhaps gifted away, perhaps lost to a conqueror's fire, you will remember the moment you last held it, the cold of its clasps, the brilliance of its pages. You will grieve quietly as one grieves a friend. For in your world, treasures are not jewels or crowns or thrones, they are books, and their glow of ink and gold illuminates not halls but centuries. The life of a palace librarian is not glamorous, though outsiders imagine otherwise. When people hear of your position, they picture you reclining with rare manuscripts, sipping spiced wine while scholars bow before your wisdom. The truth is different, quieter, lonelier, infinitely more demanding. Your days are measured not by luxury but by ritual, precise and unbroken, like the steady toll of a clock. At dawn, when the palace bell calls servants to stir, you rise in your small chamber tucked away in a forgotten corridor near the archives. Your bed is modest, your window narrow, yet even here, surrounded by stone walls, you can smell the faint musk of the library itself: parchment, leather, ink. To you it is sweeter than perfume. You wash quickly in a basin, comb your hair into order, and dress not in finery, but in simple robes ink-stained at the cuffs. A librarian's dignity is not in silks, but in discipline. The first duty of every day is the unlocking. With a heavy ring of keys at your side, you make your way to the library doors. The guards recognize you, though they never speak more than a curt nod. To them, you are not a man of secrets, but merely a caretaker. But when you push open the vast doors, you know better. You are entering the heart of the palace, the chamber where centuries are preserved. The silence greets you like an old friend. Dust hangs in shafts of morning light as you walk slowly down the aisles. Before anyone else arrives, you perform your inspection. You check the locks on the rare manuscripts, tighten straps on the great chained books, glance at the traps laid for insects, and listen for the faintest crack of wood, the sigh of paper shifting. A trained ear can detect disaster before it strikes. Then begins the ritual of cleaning. Not a hurried servant sweeping, but a scholar's care. You dust shelves with cloths of soft linen, never wool, for wool leaves threads. You oil the leather bindings of older volumes, murmuring the titles as though reciting prayers. You lift books one by one, never pulling them by the spine, always by the boards, for you know how easily centuries can be torn apart by one careless tug. To a casual visitor, this might look tedious. To you, it is sacred duty, a liturgy of preservation. As the sun climbs, the scholars and clerks begin to arrive. They shuffle in with requests, some timid, some arrogant. A priest demands a volume of sermons. A court astrologer insists on consulting a chart of the heavens. A young prince, curious and spoiled, wants to see a bestiary filled with monstrous creatures. You receive them all with the same even manner. Some you oblige, others you delay, citing restoration, translation, or royal restriction. To grant or deny access is part of your ritual, a quiet act of judgment repeated countless times. At midday, when the palace fills with noise, the clatter of dishes in the kitchens, the debates in the council chambers, you retreat to a corner desk. Here you eat a modest meal, bread, cheese, sometimes dried fruit, never wine, for you must keep your mind clear. And always, even as you chew, your hand continues its work, cataloging new arrivals, copying faded entries, updating the great inventory. The library breathes through its records, and if you falter in keeping them, knowledge itself begins to vanish. Afternoons are given to visitors of higher rank, diplomats wishing to see the treasures, nobles seeking to impress guests. Occasionally, the king himself arrives, though rarely without retinue. When he enters, every movement becomes slower, more deliberate. You bow deeply, then guide him with careful hands, showing him volumes you know will please but not overwhelm. To displease the king is dangerous. To overeducate him can be fatal. Here, ritual is not only about books, it is about survival. As evening falls, when the scholars depart and the scribes extinguish their lamps, your ritual changes tone. You make another slow round of inspection, locking away the treasures, ensuring no parchment has been left unrolled, no candle forgotten to burn low. You check the locks twice, sometimes thrice, for you have learned that one missed bolt can mean catastrophe. Only when you are certain the library sleeps safely do you close its doors for the night. And then, at last, comes the most secret part of your day. In the stillness, you return to your desk with a chosen book, sometimes permitted, sometimes not. You read in silence by a single lamp, letting the voices of the past fill your chamber. These are your stolen hours, your reward for obedience. It is here, bent over parchment, that you feel most alive. Finally, when your eyes grow heavy and the lamp burns low, you whisper the day's last ritual, a quiet promise to the books themselves. A vow that tomorrow, and the day after, and all the days to come, you will guard them still. For kings may die, empires may crumble, but your duty, the ritual of the palace librarian, must never falter. Thus passes each day, not with drama, but with endurance. And yet, in these repetitions lies power. For while generals win battles that vanish in memory, you perform small acts of care that echo for centuries. And when future scholars hold a volume and marvel at its survival, they will never know your name, but they will unknowingly honor your rituals. If the shelves are the bones of the library, the scholars are its restless blood. They flow in each day, cluttering the aisles with requests, arguments, and ambitions. To an outsider, they might all appear the same ink-stained, pale, half-blind from years of study. But to you, the palace librarian, each one is a distinct creature with habits as curious and troublesome as any beast in the king's bestiary. There is the arrogant scholar, a man who believes his learning alone sustains the palace. He strides in, robes flaring, speaking Latin as though to remind you of his superiority. He demands manuscripts with a snap of his fingers, often insisting that the works are his by right of intellect. You, who hold the keys, know better. Without your consent, he is nothing. And so you practice the art of gentle resistance, presenting him with the book he wants, but only after a deliberate pause, only after reminding him that it is the king's property, not his. Then comes the desperate one, always thin, always hollow-eyed, always smelling faintly of ink and despair. He begs for access to forgotten volumes, convinced they contain the secret to a cure, a prophecy, a hidden formula that will redeem him from obscurity. He copies frantically, his quills scratching into the night as though afraid the words will vanish before he can trap them. You pity him, for you know the truth. Most books promise less than they deliver. Yet you let him read because desperation, too, is part of the palace. There is the eccentric whose interests wander into strange corners. He requests not chronicles of kings, but manuals on beekeeping. Not scriptures, but treatises on stones that glow in the dark. Once, he asked for a recipe for purple dye, convinced it held a secret to eternal youth. Others mock him, but you find him refreshing. Eccentrics, you know, are often the sparks of new knowledge. Many laugh at them in life, then praise them in history, and then, the most difficult of all the powerful, courtiers who masquerade as scholars, using books as tools for ambition. A noble might ask for genealogies, seeking proof of his ancient lineage. A general might demand works on siegecraft, hoping to gain advantage over rivals. They do not love the words, only the leverage those words can give them. With these men, you must be cautious. Give too little, and you anger them. Give too much, and you risk arming them with knowledge that could topple the king or you. But not all scholars are trouble. There are a few who remind you why the library exists at all. The quiet old historian who sits in a corner, carefully collating dates, trying to weave a true record from conflicting accounts. The young woman, hidden under a hood, who slips in at night to copy poems she is not permitted to read. The boy who lingers by the illuminated manuscripts, whispering the names of colors he has never seen outside their painted borders. These are your secret allies, the ones who treat the library not as a weapon, but as a wonder. Still, their demands test you daily. Each scholar has his own urgency, his own conviction that his work matters above all else. They squabble with one another, accusing rivals of misquoting texts, of damaging scrolls, of monopolizing manuscripts. At times you must step between them, acting not only as librarian, but as judge, mediator, even peacekeeper. The palace itself encouraged their rivalries. The king favors one philosopher this year, another the next. Each hopes to rise higher by producing knowledge that flatters power. Thus they press you constantly. Is there not a manuscript from the East that proves this? Is there not a forgotten prophecy that supports that? You smile politely, shake your head when needed, offer alternatives when safe. For you understand that the truth of the library is larger than any scholar's demand. Some days the noise is unbearable. Quills scratching, voices muttering, feet pacing back and forth across the stone floors. You long for silence, yet you know this is the price of your guardianship. A library without readers is a tomb. Better to endure their clamor than to let the shelves gather dust unheeded. But in the quiet hours, when the scholars are gone and the books rest again in their places, you reflect on their presence. You realize that these men and women, with all their flaws and vanities, are the reason your work matters. They are bridges between the dead authors and the living world. Without them, the books would be mute. With them, they speak again. So you tolerate their arrogance, their desperation, their eccentricities, and their power games. You tolerate their endless demands because you know that through them, knowledge moves. And though they may curse you as stingy or controlling, you smile to yourself in the lamplight. For you, not they, are the true master of the library. The scholars think they use you, but in truth, you use them to keep the books alive, to give them breath, to ensure they are not forgotten. And in that balance between keeper and seeker, between demand and denial, the Palace Library endures. To most visitors, the manuscripts of the Palace Library are treasures for their text alone, the scriptures, the chronicles, the poems, but you, the librarian, know a deeper truth. The margins speak louder than the lines. When you hold a manuscript, you do not only read its words, you examine its scars. A faint smudge where a candle once dripped wax. A jagged tear where a page was too hastily turned. A faded note in a cramped hand, squeezed between columns of text. These are the true history of the book, the fingerprints of all who touched it before you. Some margins are filled with curiosity. A medieval monk, copying scripture, could not resist doodling in the empty space. Tiny faces peer from the corners, grotesque beasts dance among the letters, a rabbit in armor duels with a snail. Such drawings, whimsical and absurd, remind you that even the holiest tasks are performed by human hands. When you discover these images, you feel as though the long-dead monk winks at you across centuries, whispering, "I too grew weary of my work." Other margins are sharper. You find furious disputes written in the sides of texts, one scholar accusing another of error, correcting dates, challenging interpretations. A single chronicle may contain 3 or 4 generations of debate, scrawled in different inks, layered over time. Reading them is like listening to an argument echoing through centuries. You, turning the pages, become witness to quarrels that outlasted the men who began them. Then there are the mysterious ones. A line written in code, its letters reversed or disguised. A series of symbols no one has yet deciphered. A name written, then violently scratched out. Sometimes you wonder if these notes were left as warnings or as invitations. Perhaps they conceal knowledge too dangerous to place openly in the text. Perhaps they are secrets meant for a chosen reader, perhaps for you. The most haunting are the personal voices. A weary scribe writing, "Pray for me for my hand is tired." A student confessing, "I read this by candlelight and now my eyes fail me." A woman noting in the edge of a love poem, "His words remind me of one I lost." These small lines, fragile as breath, transform the book into a vessel of memory. They remind you that literature is not only written by great authors, but shaped by ordinary lives brushing against the page. As librarian, you begin to recognize patterns. Certain families leave distinctive marks. Certain scholars have a signature style of annotation. You could, if you wished, trace an entire lineage of thought through marginalia alone. In this, you become not only a keeper of books, but a detective of the forgotten, piecing together the secret history of readers. Yet these notes bring danger too. Some margins reveal seditious whispers, complaints about the king, prophecies of doom, heresies hidden in tiny script. You must decide what to do with them. Do you erase them to protect the library's reputation? Do you conceal them, locking away the book in a chest? Or do you preserve them, believing that even dangerous voices deserve to survive? Every choice is perilous. One wrong decision could be seen as treason. And then there is the temptation to add your own voice. You handle these books more than anyone else. You know their patterns, their flaws, their mysteries. The urge to write a note, to leave your own whisper in the margin, is almost unbearable. Perhaps you do, now and then, in careful cipher. A symbol only you understand. A word so small no one else would notice. In this way, you too join the silent conversation stretching across centuries. Sometimes you wonder, are you the last to read these words? When you see a margin filled with a lover's sigh, a scholar's rage, or a child's clumsy sketch, you wonder if yours will be the last eyes to see it before time erases the ink. And if so, what duty do you have? To protect? To erase, or simply to remember? The books whisper endlessly, not only in their texts, but in their margins. And as you pass among the shelves, lantern in hand, you realize the true library is not written on the lines, but between them. It lives in the laughter, the arguments, the secrets, the prayers, scribbled at the edge of the page. And you, the palace librarian, are their keeper? Beyond the gleaming shelves, beyond the illuminated manuscripts, beyond the trusted chambers where scholars wander freely, lies the most secret wing of the palace library, the forbidden section. To most, it does not exist. To you, it is a labyrinth of shadows, a place where even candlelight hesitates. The air here is heavier, cooler, tinged with the faint scent of iron and old smoke. The walls are lined with black oak, polished so dark it seems to absorb the light. Shelves reach impossibly high, cradling books bound in materials you dare not name. Here lie the manuscripts that could topple dynasties, ignite rebellions, or reveal truths the living fear to know. Some are written in dead tongues, their meanings lost except to the initiated. Others are in cipher, ink so faded it takes hours just to decipher a single line. Access to this wing is not granted lightly. Only the librarian and the king, or, on rare occasions, his most trusted advisors may enter. A heavy key turns in the iron lock, and the door creaks open with a sound like a groaning coffin. Beyond, darkness waits. You carry a lantern, though its flame seems paltry against the oppressive shadow. Every step echoes, and the sound itself seems to disturb the weight of the centuries pressing in. You know these texts intimately, more than anyone else. You know which pages are brittle, which bindings are weak, which scrolls are infected with mold. You know which books whisper secrets of poisons, which describe forbidden rituals, which hold prophecies of rulers yet unborn. And you also know which texts could damn the reader's soul or their life if mishandled. Some nights, when the palace sleeps, you wander these stacks alone. Your fingers graze the spines with reverence and fear. The books seem alive. You swear you hear faint rustlings, the faint murmur of voices long dead. In these moments, you realize the weight you bear. Not only are you guardian of knowledge, you are also the barrier between it and the world. Here, mistakes are unforgivable. Once, decades past, a scholar of audacity now long gone slipped into this wing. He sought a text of arcane philosophy said to predict the collapse of empires. He touched a single page and disappeared from history. Officially, he died abroad of illness. Unofficially, the whispers say the book's curse claimed him. Stories like this are your nightly companion, warnings carved into memory, reminding you that knowledge is power but dangerous power, demanding vigilance beyond sleep. Despite the fear, the forbidden texts draw you irresistibly. The margins are filled with symbols and annotations you alone can decipher. A cryptic circle here, a tiny notation there, a star beside a line of prophecy. These are traces of those who came before you, fellow custodians whose identities have been lost to time. Sometimes it feels as though you are speaking with them, across centuries, through their invisible handwriting. The king, aware of your skill, sometimes entrusts you with tasks in this shadowed wing. A volume containing the histories of treacherous ministers, carefully inked in code, must be consulted for a council meeting. A text describing forbidden medicines must be located for a royal healer. In these moments, the stakes are immense. You move silently, precisely, aware that one misstep could unravel decades of secrecy, or worse, endanger lives. There are rumors of texts that are more than dangerous. They are sentient, cursed, or alive. Some books, it is whispered, rearrange their letters when no one watches, hiding secrets only revealed to the most diligent reader. Others cause dreams, nightmares that seep into waking hours, forcing readers to act upon visions that may be true or may be madness. You have seen hints of these phenomena. A manuscript that had been perfectly aligned one morning appears subtly altered by nightfall. Margins seem to shift, notes appear where there were none. You speak to no one of these occurrences for fear of disbelief or worse. And yet responsibility weighs heavier than fear. You catalog each book meticulously, recording the presence of every volume in the forbidden ledger. Each entry notes not only the book's title, but its condition, its peculiarities, its dangers. You are meticulous, for mistakes here could be catastrophic. The ledger itself is hidden, locked in a chest within the shadowed wing. If the ledger were lost, the kingdom would have no record of what knowledge exists or what must remain concealed. You also perform nightly rituals here, not only of care but of protection. You circle the shelves, brushing dust gently from surfaces, whispering a mantra of vigilance. You place protective charm symbols subtle near certain books, crafted from centuries-old recipes of ink and resin, meant to deter tampering or misfortune. In these hours, the library becomes less a repository of knowledge than a living organism, a cathedral of shadows and you its silent priest. Yet the forbidden wing is also tempting. You cannot deny curiosity, nor can you deny the allure of understanding what others dare not see. You sometimes linger with a manuscript just a little longer than necessary, tracing its letters, imagining the minds that wrote them. But your careful discipline is survival. You know the stories of those who succumb to curiosity's pull. Even a master librarian can vanish into history, leaving nothing but echoes and regrets. Here, in the shadows, you understand something fundamental. Knowledge is neither good nor evil. It is potential. The danger lies not in the ink, nor the paper, nor the scroll, but in those who wield it. And you, silent and watchful, are the fulcrum. The balance of power rests not in swords or crowns, but in the careful hands of a librarian who chooses when to reveal and when to conceal. As dawn creeps over the palace, the forbidden wing retreats into quiet once more. You lock the doors, check the keys, breathe deep, and step back into the ordinary light of the library. Scholars bustle, candles flicker, papers rustle, but you carry the weight of shadows within you, a secret guardian of forbidden knowledge. And tomorrow, when the world demands attention elsewhere, the wings of darkness will wait for your return. Every palace librarian knows that books are only part of the story. Beyond the manuscripts, beyond the illuminated scrolls, there exists another layer of history, the ledger, hidden, secret, and unassuming. It is your own creation, a meticulous account of everything that occurs within the library and often beyond. It is your confidant, your weapon, your shield. The ledger is small enough to carry, but heavy with consequence. Its pages are filled with precise records, which manuscripts were consulted, by whom, at what hour, and under what pretext. But it also contains subtler notes, observations of visitors, anomalies in the texts, hints of intrigue whispered in the margins of forbidden volumes. Every entry is written in your hand, in a cipher only you can read. Its survival is as critical as that of the library itself. You know the ledger's danger. If it falls into the wrong hands, it is a map of secrets and vulnerabilities. One page could expose a treacherous minister, another could reveal a queen's sorrowful correspondences, and yet another could document the subtle theft of a rare manuscript. You lock it away in a chest, hidden behind false panels in the shadowed wing. Even the king is unaware of its existence, not because you defy him, but because sometimes knowledge itself must be shielded from the very rulers it serves. The ledger grows daily. Each scholar, each courtier, each foreign emissary leaves traces of ambition or folly that you record silently. A young poet, eager for patronage, borrows volumes he cannot understand. A senior advisor, plotting a shift in power, consults texts you know contain dangerous precedents. You note everything, the time, the text, the exact actions, for even seemingly innocuous events can ripple through history. A misread word, a misplaced scroll, a forgotten annotation, any of these can alter the course of politics or empire. One entry from a few weeks past still haunts you. A scholar of notorious cunning requested access to an old military treatise, one that described siege engines and poison delivery systems. He lingered over it, quill poised as if calculating a plan. You recorded every motion, every hesitation, every whispered comment, aware that even the smallest detail might matter. Later, you would realize he had indeed been planning something, though the specifics remain locked in your memory, hidden beneath layers of cautious thought. The ledger also captures subtle signs of human emotion. The queen's tear-stained letters, the prince's clumsy admiration for a poet, the pale, trembling hands of a novice scholar discovering a lost work for the first time, all are noted. To an outsider, these might seem trivial. To you, they are essential. History is not only facts. It is the heartbeat of people, captured in small gestures, recorded carefully so that their echoes endure. Sometimes the ledger records danger. A scratch on a lock, a mislaid key, a hint that someone has trespassed into forbidden wings. These notes alert you before disaster strikes. You have used them to intercept would-be thieves, to prevent the destruction of priceless manuscripts, to save scholars from their own ambition. The ledger is both map and weapon, a silent sentinel documenting threats before they manifest. Yet it is also tempting. Each night, alone in your chamber, you sometimes read it and imagine what would happen if a single entry were revealed. Who would rise? Who would fall? Who would be disgraced? You resist. To reveal the ledger is to betray the trust of centuries. Its power is in secrecy, and you guard it as fiercely as any king's treasury. The ledger chronicles patterns too. Certain scholars return year after year, their habits predictable. Certain courtiers press for access at predictable intervals. Certain texts are repeatedly requested, as though their secrets are sought for personal advantage. These patterns allow you to anticipate actions, to prepare, to defend. In a way, the ledger is more alive than the manuscripts themselves. It moves, reacts, and informs in real time. There is also a moral weight to your records. Sometimes you note sins, theft, deception, misuse of texts. Sometimes virtues, diligence, curiosity, reverence. In your careful hand, the ledger becomes a mirror of the palace, reflecting not only what is written in ink, but what is hidden in hearts. You are both observer and judge, yet you must remain impartial, for your role is preservation, not interference. At times, the ledger seems to possess a will of its own. Entries you do not remember making appear, as if recorded by the books themselves. Perhaps it is memory tricking you, or fatigue, or the strange, subtle influence of the library's power. But you have learned not to question it too closely. The ledger is alive in its own way, a companion in silence, a witness to deeds too delicate to place in public record. The greatest challenge is balancing transparency and concealment. You must allow access to knowledge when necessary, but always track it in the ledger. A scholar may request a sensitive text and you permit it, but you note every detail, every reaction. When the king or his ministers inquire, your ledger allows explanation without revealing judgment. It is the fine line between authority and secrecy, and you walk it with unbroken precision. By the end of each day, the ledger is closed and locked, its contents hidden beneath layers of protection. Yet in your chamber, late at night, you sometimes read entries from decades past, noting the care, the errors, the mysteries of former librarians. In these pages, you glimpse not only the history of the palace, but of humanity itself. Ambition, fear, love, curiosity, deceit, all entwined in the careful hand of one who dared to record the truth. The ledger is your life, your responsibility, your most dangerous possession. It is a repository of human frailty and genius, of ambition and folly. To guard it is to guard the palace, the knowledge within, and in many ways, the kingdom itself. And yet, it is fragile. A single mistake, a single moment of distraction, could undo years of vigilance. You feel its weight as you lay it down each night, knowing that tomorrow, the ledger and all it protects must endure another day. In the ledger lies the power to preserve, the power to protect, and the power to destroy. You wield it cautiously, silently, invisibly. And so the palace endures and the library survives, while the world outside remains blissfully unaware of the secrets you guard, the threats you intercept, and the whispers of history you alone hear. The palace sleeps in patterns of silence and shadow, yet even in its deepest quiet, not all is at peace. You, the librarian, know this better than anyone. Every creak of a floorboard, every sigh of the wind through the stone corridors is amplified in your awareness. For within these walls, knowledge is power, and power invites intrusion. It begins subtly. A misplaced candle, a door left slightly ajar, a faint echo of footsteps in halls otherwise still. Your instincts, honed over years, tell you something is amiss. The forbidden's wing, so meticulously guarded, feels heavier tonight, as if the very air senses trespass. You clutch your keys, lantern in hand, and move with deliberate silence. The first intruder is often clever, aware of the traps you employ, the false panels, the iron locks, the minor alarms woven into the shelves themselves. But cleverness alone is rarely enough. You have studied the library's every shadow, every hidden path. You know the alcoves where a person could crouch unseen, the angles where a lantern might give away movement. As you walk, your mind maps possibilities, anticipates every approach. Then the signs become undeniable, a scroll unrolled, its edges frayed. A book removed from a shelf too low to reach without assistance, a faint fingerprint on the polished wood. You whisper under your breath, noting the breach in your mental ledger, a trespasser, precise and patient, already inside the heart of the library. You do not rush. Bravery without strategy is useless. Instead, you perform a dance one of shadows, light, and timing. You let the intruder believe they are alone, drawing them further into the labyrinthine aisles. You follow at a distance, observing, cataloging, predicting. One false move, one misstep from them, and the consequences could be catastrophic. A destroyed manuscript, a stolen secret, perhaps even the king's wrath if the intruder succeeds. Intruders are varied. Some are scholars gone rogue, obsessed with forbidden texts. Some are courtiers ambitious and ruthless, testing boundaries for political advantage. Some are thieves sent by foreign powers, seeking treasures not of gold, but of knowledge. You have encountered all, and each presents a unique challenge. The scholar may hesitate under pressure, the noble may bluff. The trained thief may move like a shadow, but none can outthink the librarian who knows the library as every heartbeat. Your lantern casts long, wavering shadows as you close the distance. The intruder pauses, sensing a presence they cannot see. Their heartbeat is almost audible to you in the silence. They reach for a book, but you know already which text they covet, the one rumored to contain secrets of state, hidden among innocuous volumes. Your pulse quickens, not with fear, but anticipation. This is the culmination of all your training, all your vigilance, a confrontation where intellect, patience, and secrecy must prevail. Words are your first weapon. You call softly from the shadows. That is not for you. No accusation, no anger, just calm authority. The intruder freezes. One small misstep, one abrupt motion, and all could be revealed. They hesitate, then continue, emboldened or desperate, depending on their nature. You allow them a measure of illusion, a sense of control. A rash reaction could ruin everything. At this moment, your knowledge of human behavior is as crucial as your knowledge of books. You observe their eyes, the tension in their shoulders, the minute movements that betray intent. You anticipate every action. A stolen manuscript is prevented not by force alone, but by foresight, by understanding the desires and fears of the intruder. You manipulate without touching, directing them subtly away from treasures they seek. The dance becomes intricate. You lead them past traps, hidden locks that require impossible dexterity, false shelves that shift when pressure is applied, subtle warnings only visible from certain angles. Each move is calculated, each step a test of patience. The intruder adapts, but so do you. Years of living among these shelves have taught you the rhythm of the library, and the library itself seems to respond, bending shadows and light to aid you. Finally, the intruder falters. Perhaps they grasp the futility, or perhaps your strategy has guided them toward the exit. They retreat, careful not to draw attention, leaving behind subtle signs of their presence, a displaced book, a faint scent, a whisper of movement. You catalog each detail in your mental ledger, noting the methods used, the likely goals, the timing. These records are as important as the manuscripts themselves. They allow you to anticipate future threats. Afterward, you move through the aisles, inspecting every shelf, every manuscript, every lock. Nothing can remain amiss. The tension lingers in the air, a residue of human ambition brushed against centuries of knowledge. You relock the doors to the forbidden's wing, double-check the false panels, and replace your lantern. Only then do you allow yourself a moment to breathe, knowing the danger has passed for now. These intrusions, repeated over years, teach lessons more valuable than any text. They reinforce vigilance, strategy, and patience. They remind you that power is always contested, even within walls of stone and oak. And they confirm what you have long known: a palace librarian's true duty is not only to preserve knowledge, but to defend it against human desire, ambition, and folly. By dawn, the intruder is gone, the palace unaware, and the library appears untouched. Scholars arrive as usual, oblivious to the night's drama. You, however, carry its memory etched into your mind as sharply as any marginal note. For you are not merely a keeper of books, you are a sentinel, the silent guardian of secrets, navigating a labyrinth of shadows where curiosity and danger dance together. And you know, deep within, that this dance will continue. For as long as knowledge exists, so too will those who covet it. And as long as they come, you will meet them in the dark, unseen, unheard, preserving the fragile line between discovery and disaster. Even in the quietest corners of the library, the past speaks. Not through the words of the manuscripts themselves, but through hidden voices left behind in letters, diaries, and secret messages that have survived the decay of centuries. As palace librarian, you have learned to listen, to read not only the text, but the spaces between, the subtle signs, the shadows of former lives. It begins with a diary tucked behind a row of neglected books, its leather cover cracked and fragile. You recognize it as belonging to a forgotten courtier, one whose influence once swayed decisions in the king's council. The handwriting is small, meticulous, almost obsessive. The entries tell of intrigues, betrayals, and minor scandals that no official record dared preserve. A quarrel over land, a secret marriage, a stolen manuscript. These small events seem mundane, yet they shape the currents of history in ways invisible to ordinary eyes. Next, you discover letters folded into the spines of books. Some are from the king himself, written in haste, their ink smudged by nervous fingers. Others are from queens and advisors, their tones pleading, commanding, or quietly threatening. Many were hidden deliberately, meant never to be seen outside a trusted circle. You handle each envelope with reverence and fear, knowing that even centuries later, the power of these words remains. A single revelation could change how the palace is understood, even now. Sometimes the messages are encoded. Tiny symbols, odd punctuation, or letters written backward conceal meaning meant only for the intended recipient. You have deciphered some, while others remain mysteries, taunting you with secrets just beyond your grasp. It is a constant puzzle, one that demands patience, intelligence, and caution. You have learned never to reveal a solution without certainty. Misinterpretation could be disastrous. There are notes left in margins, scraps of paper folded into pages, and invisible inks that appear only under careful light. You have unearthed plans for alliances that never came to pass, confessions of lovers forbidden to speak, and petitions of nobles seeking favor through words never meant for public eyes. All these whispers converge, forming a tapestry of intrigue, emotion, and human desire that the official records conceal. You sometimes wonder about the people who left these traces. What drove them to hide their words? Fear? Shame? Love? Ambition? Each note carries a fragment of their soul, frozen in time, waiting for the right eyes to understand it. And in these fragments, you see the full complexity of the palace, not just its power, its ceremonies, or its battles, but its humanity, raw and unpolished, echoing through centuries. Handling these documents demands care beyond mere preservation. You must ensure that the fragile papers survive, that the ink does not fade, that no unintended reader discovers them. Some letters are so delicate that a single touch could crumble them to dust. You employ techniques handed down from your predecessors: careful cradling, the use of soft brushes to remove dust, controlled humidity to prevent mold. In your hands, history is alive and vulnerable, as much a living thing as any scholar or soldier in the palace. Yet the whispers are more than historical curiosities. They sometimes contain warnings, hints of plots, forgotten edicts, secret alliances, or veiled threats. You catalog these carefully in your ledger, noting their context, the people involved, and potential consequences. The library is no longer just a place of learning. It becomes a map of human ambition, its twists and turns recorded silently in the margins. On occasion, the past speaks directly to you. A note from a long-dead librarian cautions against certain texts. A diary entry hints at hidden compartments buried beneath the floorboards, where items of great value, books, coins, letters are concealed. You follow these whispers as you would a trail in the forest, cautious but relentless, uncovering layers of history that the living sought to bury. Some discoveries are troubling. A lover's plea that was never answered, a plea for mercy ignored. A warning unheeded. These personal tragedies linger in the air of the library as if waiting for justice. And though you cannot intervene in the past, you feel a responsibility to preserve these voices accurately so that history remembers them, even if the world above never acknowledges their existence. The whispers of the past also remind you of the fragility of memory. Official records tell one story, but the hidden messages reveal another, often conflicting narrative. Truth is not absolute in the palace. It is layered, complicated, and sometimes deliberately obscured. Your role is to hold these contradictions together, maintaining balance while never losing sight of the subtle signals left behind by those who came before. Occasionally, the whispers reach into your dreams. Letters you read by lamplight haunt your sleep, visions of secret councils, of lovers meeting in shadowed corridors, of conspiracies nearly realized. When you wake, you sometimes record these dreams alongside the historical notes, for you have learned that intuition, memory, and perception are as vital as observation in understanding the full story. By carefully reading and recording the whispers, you gain insights into human behavior that no textbook could provide. You see the motivations behind betrayal, the caution behind ambition, the desperation behind desire. You understand that knowledge itself is a form of power, and that those who wield it, whether openly or in secret, shape the fate of kingdoms. The more you uncover, the more complex the tapestry becomes. Each fragment of the past connects to another, revealing patterns that span decades, sometimes centuries. The palace in its grandeur is more than a building. It is a living organism of ambition and secrecy. And you, the librarian, are its silent observer, piecing together these hidden strands while remaining invisible, indispensable, and ever vigilant. In these hours, alone among the whispers, you feel the full weight of your role. Not merely as guardian of texts, not merely as keeper of secrets, but as witness to lives long past. The voices of the forgotten speak through your hands, and it is your duty to ensure that they are not lost again. By the time dawn spills into the library, you have cataloged every new discovery, noted every insight, and returned the letters and diaries to their hidden places. The whispers remain, waiting for the next careful reader, but for now, you carry their stories within you. You close the ledger, lock the chest, and step into the light of the waking palace, bearing the voices of centuries in silence, knowing that the past, though buried, will always speak to those who listen. In a palace filled with intrigue, ambition, and ambition masked as duty, no one acts alone. You have learned this lesson long ago. Though your role as librarian appears solitary, in reality, it is defined by a delicate web of secret alliances, relationships cultivated quietly, maintained carefully, and leveraged only when necessary. These connections allow you to preserve the library, safeguard its secrets, and navigate the dangerous currents of palace politics. Your first alliance is with the palace scribe. Though they appear subordinate, their knowledge of the king's correspondence, of orders issued, and of official record-keeping is invaluable. You share a silent understanding. They will alert you when certain documents might be needed, and you will ensure that texts of importance are preserved or withheld as circumstances demand. Together, you form a protective layer between knowledge and misuse, a covert partnership invisible to outsiders. Next is the scholar who trusts you. Rarely does a student or philosopher possess the wisdom to comprehend the library's intricacies, but those who do are treasures in their own right. They offer insight into complex texts, translate forgotten languages, and provide counsel when decisions regarding forbidden knowledge must be made. You allow them access, but only selectively. Their loyalty is tested, subtly reinforced by the understanding that betrayal would not only cost them favor, but perhaps their lives. Mutual dependence forms the foundation of this fragile alliance. Then there are courtiers, those with power, influence, or ambition whose interests align with yours, at least temporarily. A minister may desire a specific manuscript, but their goals can be shaped by your discretion. By providing the right knowledge at the right time, you guide outcomes subtly. You do not manipulate for personal gain. Rather, you preserve the library's integrity and maintain the balance of power in ways the king himself cannot perceive. These alliances are delicate. Too much information and the courtier grows arrogant. Too little and suspicion arises. Timing and subtlety are everything. Some alliances are even more secretive. The guards who patrol the palace at night. They are not privy to your knowledge, yet they respect your authority. You allow them small pieces of information, a hidden path, a false shelf, a risk to prevent. In exchange, they provide protection against intruders you cannot detect yourself. These partnerships operate on unspoken trust, reinforced by mutual understanding that the library is not only a repository of books, but a sanctuary requiring vigilance. The most complex alliances are with those who dwell in shadow, courtiers with ambitions unspoken, scribes with knowledge of forbidden texts, and even rival librarians who manage smaller collections elsewhere in the palace. To cooperate, you must engage in subtle negotiation, providing favors in return for information or access, always balancing trust and caution. One misstep can unravel years of careful diplomacy. A whispered betrayal could lead to confiscation, exile, or death. Yet these alliances are necessary. They allow you to anticipate threats, uncover secrets, and maintain control over knowledge flows. Occasionally, these alliances are tested. A trusted scholar may be coerced by a minister seeking forbidden texts. A guard may be bribed to mislead you. A courtier may attempt to manipulate access for personal gain. Each situation demands careful judgment: when to intervene, when to observe, when to withhold information. The stakes are never merely academic. Lives, reputations, and the stability of the palace itself hang in the balance. Communication within these alliances is subtle. A glance across the hall, a folded note hidden among pages, a coded phrase whispered during a quiet moment. Each gesture conveys meaning without revealing secrets to outsiders. The library itself becomes a network of signals, a space where knowledge, trust, and power intersect in silent coordination. You are the hub, the central node, the unseen orchestrator ensuring that information moves safely, selectively, and strategically. Your alliances also extend to the past. The hidden ledger, diaries, letters, and marginalia offer guidance, allowing you to learn from predecessors' successes and failures. In essence, the library itself forms an alliance with you. Its manuscripts, marginal notes, and encoded messages provide counsel, warnings, and insights. By listening to these echoes, you navigate the present with awareness of centuries of precedent, anticipating human behavior, ambition, and folly with a precision few could match. Even trust within these alliances is conditional. Each member has their own motives, their own ambitions, their own fears. You must assess loyalty constantly, observe behaviors, and gauge intentions. One careless act can unravel trust, and once trust is broken, the library itself is vulnerable. This constant vigilance is exhausting, but necessary. The palace is a living organism, unpredictable and reactive, and knowledge is its heartbeat. To protect it requires alliances grounded in loyalty, discretion, and understanding. Yet despite the complexity, there is satisfaction in these relationships. You see outcomes shaped subtly by your guidance. A scholar discovers a truth without endangering sensitive knowledge. A minister avoids disaster through information you provide carefully. A dangerous text remains secure, unseen by those who might misuse it. These small victories reaffirm your role, not merely as librarian, but as guardian, strategist, and quiet influencer within the palace. The alliances also teach humility. You realize that no one, not even the king, holds absolute power. Knowledge, carefully curated and protected, is the true force within the palace. Those who understand this, scholars, scribes, guards, and silent confidants, are your partners in a delicate dance. Together, you maintain equilibrium in a world where a single misstep could topple reputations, destroy manuscripts, or ignite conflict. At night, after the palace has settled into slumber, you reflect on these relationships. Each alliance is a thread, delicate yet essential, forming a network that sustains the library's survival. The web is intricate, invisible to most, but every connection strengthens your ability to preserve knowledge, anticipate danger, and guide outcomes without direct confrontation. Through these alliances, the library thrives. The forbidden texts remain secure, the manuscripts preserved, the whispers of the past respected. And you, the librarian, move among these threads with precision and foresight, balancing secrecy and influence, observation and intervention. Your work is never seen by the public, rarely acknowledged by those in power, yet it shapes the course of the palace in ways profound and enduring. In this network of trust and discretion, you find purpose. You are more than a guardian of books, you are the unseen hand, the quiet strategist, the invisible force ensuring that knowledge endures. Secrets are preserved, and history flows without catastrophic disruption. Through careful alliances, the palace library remains not only intact but alive, a living testament to human ambition, curiosity, and caution. And you, ever vigilant, continue your silent work, knowing that these alliances, like the books themselves, are fragile, precious, and essential. The palace sleeps, unaware, while you navigate this intricate dance of loyalty, secrecy and power, safeguarding the wisdom of the ages in the shadows. The palace is not only a realm of internal intrigue, but a magnet for eyes beyond its walls. Foreign envoys arrive with carefully measured courtesy, their intentions hidden beneath embroidered robes, polished manners, and gilded letters of introduction. They seek knowledge maps, chronicles, strategies, genealogies that could give them advantage over rivals. And you, the librarian, are their quiet gatekeeper, a figure whose approval or denial can alter the flow of power across kingdoms. From the moment they step into the library, you sense the tension. Their gaze flickers across the shelves, lingering on volumes too important for casual inspection. Their questions are polite, their interest refined, yet beneath it all lies a hunger for information. You watch closely, noting gestures, measuring tone, observing curiosity that may hide deception. For in your experience, no visitor is as innocent as they appear. The first test is subtle, a request for texts of general history, ostensibly for academic study. You comply, offering volumes that appear valuable but conceal the truly sensitive works. You watch as the envoy scans, flipping pages, unaware of what remains hidden. You measure every reaction, hesitation, eagerness, surprise. Each tells a story, revealing more than their words could convey. You record these observations in your mental ledger, for they may indicate intentions to return or to manipulate others for access. Some envoys are patient, studying trivial manuscripts with meticulous care, hoping to uncover hidden clues in marginalia, doodles, or faint annotations. Others are audacious, seeking entry to the forbidden wing or attempting to negotiate special access. In these cases, you exercise a delicate balance of diplomacy and authority. You never outright refuse without reason, yet you ensure that nothing truly sensitive is revealed. One misstep, one moment of overconfidence, could compromise the library, the palace, or your own position. You also engage in subtle testing. You provide texts that appear straightforward but contain hidden lessons or controlled inaccuracies. A false annotation may expose overconfidence. A misleading chronology may reveal intentions or provoke unguarded commentary. These methods are your silent tools, allowing you to measure the envoy's understanding, honesty, and ambition without alerting them to the fact they are being observed. Foreign envoys are not merely scholars, they are agents of influence. A map of distant lands, a translation of an obscure treaty, or a record of military logistics could shift the balance of power. You have seen cases where a single manuscript, obtained clandestinely, altered negotiations, fomented unrest, or provided advantage in war. Understanding this, you treat each request with meticulous care. Knowledge is power, and power in the wrong hands can be devastating. Sometimes alliances you have cultivated within the palace are tested by these envoys. Courtiers may attempt to curry favor by providing information beyond your sanction. Scribes may be bribed to translate forbidden texts. Guards may be manipulated to allow unauthorized access. You must navigate these layers of intrigue, intervening subtly, redirecting attention, and ensuring that no unauthorized knowledge escapes. Every move is a careful calculation, each step balancing diplomacy, secrecy, and strategy. The interactions themselves are a subtle dance. Envoys compliment, question, and observe in equal measure. You respond with measured courtesy, allowing them the illusion of influence while controlling the flow of information. Small gestures, a tilted book, a deliberately slow turning of pages, a glance at the wrong annotation can convey authority or dissuade further probing. You have mastered the art of saying nothing while saying everything. Yet despite caution, danger is never absent. One foreign scholar once attempted to copy a page from a chronicle containing sensitive information about royal succession. You detected the effort immediately, the way the candlelight flickered over the parchment, the slight pressure of their fingers. Swiftly and silently you intervened, removing the manuscript and presenting another. Later, in your ledger, you noted every detail, their methods, timing, demeanor. Such vigilance ensures the palace remains secure, even when outsiders seek advantage. The more skilled envoys become a test of intellect and patience. They may arrive with knowledge of other kingdoms, subtle questions about texts, or hints of awareness of the library's secrets. These challenges require not only memory but interpretation. You must recall centuries of knowledge, understand the implications of a phrase, anticipate the potential consequences of revealing a particular fact. Each interaction is both defensive and proactive, a negotiation where the stakes are as high as any council chamber or battlefield. Trust is carefully measured. Rarely you identify an envoy whose intentions are honorable, whose curiosity is genuine, and whose study could benefit both your palace and their own kingdom. In such cases, you permit access, providing texts that teach and illuminate without compromising security. Even then, every action is recorded in your mental ledger, what was revealed, what was withheld, and the possible long-term effects. History is patient, but its consequences are swift if the wrong knowledge is misused. The interplay of alliances and observation extends beyond the envoys themselves. Within the palace, ministers and nobles may pressure you to favor one visitor over another, or to grant access to knowledge that could influence political negotiations. Here, your discretion is paramount. You navigate requests with subtlety, ensuring that your actions protect the integrity of the library while preserving your position. Knowledge is both currency and shield. Wielded wisely, it safeguards the palace and its inhabitants. By the end of the day, the envoys depart, courtesies exchanged, smiles painted across their faces. Yet, you know the truth of the encounter. Some ambitions have been tested, some secrets remain safe, and some lessons have been taught without ever speaking a word aloud. The library, as always, remains intact, its manuscripts untouched by the manipulations of outsiders. You record everything in your ledger, the date, the visitors, the texts consulted, the reactions observed. Even the smallest detail may matter in the future, a glance, a gesture, a subtle question. The ledger is not merely record-keeping, it is foresight, an insurance against the unpredictable nature of human ambition. And as the night falls and the palace sleeps once more, you walk the aisles with lantern in hand, reflecting on the delicate balance you maintain. Foreign eyes will return, courtiers will maneuver, and scholars will persist. But as long as you hold vigilance, as long as your alliances remain strong, and as long as the ledger records every nuance, the library endures. Knowledge is safeguarded, secrets are protected, and the whispers of history continue to speak only to those who are ready to listen. In this way, the library is more than a collection of texts. It is a living entity, a guardian of power, and a silent arbiter of influence. And you, the palace librarian, move through its shadows with unmatched skill, ensuring that every visitor, every envoy, and every ambition respects the sanctity of its knowledge. It was an ordinary morning when the discovery occurred. The palace had barely awakened, the corridors still cloaked in the lingering fog of dawn, and the library's vast halls smelled faintly of old parchment and waxed wood. You, ever vigilant, had begun your daily inspection, ensuring that every volume was in its rightful place, every manuscript accounted for, every lock intact. And yet, among the familiar rows, a single book called to you in a way no ordinary text ever had. The manuscript was unassuming, bound in rough brown leather, its edges frayed with age. No title marked the cover, no emblem suggested importance, yet something about its presence felt deliberate, as if the library itself had insisted it be found. You lifted it carefully, brushing away centuries of dust, and opened the cover. What you found inside made your heart quicken, a series of letters and notes hidden in layers of folded parchment. That revealed a plot so intricate, so audacious, that it threatened to unravel the delicate balance of the kingdom itself. The plot's architect had been careful. Messages were encoded with ciphers, words carefully chosen to conceal identities, instructions camouflaged within historical analysis, and maps annotated with routes, hidden compartments, and secret rendezvous points. It was a conspiracy centuries in the making, or at least centuries in documentation. The sheer scope astounded you, a secret alliance among courtiers, some dead, some still alive, designed to seize power at a moment when the monarchy's attention would falter. Your first instinct was disbelief. Could such a plan really have survived unnoticed, its records hidden so perfectly among innocuous texts? But as you read, line by meticulous line, the handwriting revealed itself as deliberate, precise, and unmistakably authentic. Marginal notes referenced events, individuals, and symbols that only someone deeply familiar with the palace could understand. This was no idle curiosity. This was strategy recorded for posterity or for future actors to discover. You immediately recognized the danger. If these pages were discovered by the wrong person, the palace could descend into chaos. Ministers could be implicated, nobles accused, and innocent lives endangered. Even the king, so far removed from these shadows, could face threats he could not anticipate. And yet you also understood the responsibility you bore. This knowledge could not be ignored. To record it is to wield power, but to act recklessly is to court disaster. You returned to your desk, bringing the manuscript with you, and began the slow process of decoding its secrets. The ciphers were complex, involving not only substitution but layered allegory, references to poetry and obscure historical events. Each word demanded attention. Each symbol required interpretation. Hours passed, and as the dawn light gave way to the pale afternoon, the outlines of the plot became clearer. It was elegant in its design, horrifying in its ambition, and utterly silent in execution. The conspirators had anticipated contingency after contingency. They had mapped routes through the palace, secret passages, and hidden compartments. They had manipulated alliances, bribed or coerced key figures, and ensured that communication would remain invisible to all but those initiated. The audacity of it left you simultaneously awed and terrified. For in your hands you held not just documents, but the blueprint of potential upheaval. You also realized that some of the conspirators might still be active. A few names mentioned in the notes corresponded to ministers currently holding positions of influence. Others were foreign agents whose allegiances were uncertain. Every detail you uncovered added to the complexity of the situation. You could not act openly. Doing so would expose your own knowledge, jeopardize your position, and risk the safety of the palace itself. Patience and strategy were imperative. The ledger became your constant companion. Every deciphered clue, every observation, every inference was recorded meticulously. You created cross-references, linking events, names, and symbols, constructing a map of intrigue that allowed you to anticipate movements and intentions. This was no longer merely preservation of history. It was active engagement with living politics, a dangerous interplay where a single misstep could prove fatal. At night, the manuscript rested beside your lamp, its pages spread carefully to avoid damage. You read by the dim glow, tracing patterns, noting repetitions, and observing the subtle language of deception. Each revelation was a test of courage, a hidden note implicating a high-ranking noble, a cryptic reference to a potential coup, a subtle plan to manipulate succession. The realization weighed heavily. Knowledge, once acquired, cannot be unlearned. And in your hands, the power to act or refrain from action was absolute. You began to anticipate potential breaches. Ministers who had always seemed loyal were suddenly cast in a new light. Envoys whose courtesy masked subtle ambition now appeared as potential threats. Even your alliances required recalibration. The scholar who once assisted with translation might unknowingly be drawn into exposure. The palace scribe could misinterpret an instruction, leading to disastrous consequences. Everything and everyone had to be measured anew against the backdrop of this dangerous discovery. The manuscript also challenged your sense of morality. Some conspirators had acted out of self-preservation, others out of ambition, and still others out of idealism. To expose all would be to impose your own judgment upon history, potentially punishing those whose intentions were complex or conflicted. To conceal it entirely might allow the plan's remnants to linger, hidden but potent. You found yourself weighing centuries of ethical considerations against the immediate demands of security and loyalty. Gradually, a plan began to form. You could leverage the information strategically, subtly redirect attention, influence decisions, fortify the palace against potential threats, and ensure that knowledge remained in the hands of those capable of safeguarding it. The manuscript was no longer merely a historical document. It was a tool, a test of your ability to navigate the intersection of power, knowledge, and morality. As the day ended, you locked the manuscript in its hidden chest, surrounded by false panels and layers of security. Yet, even as you did so, the awareness lingered. The conspiracy is alive in ink and memory, and your vigilance must be constant. You alone carry the knowledge, alone in understanding both its significance and its danger. The palace may remain unaware, but you, the librarian, are acutely aware of the storm that could arise if these whispers of the past are mismanaged. In that moment, the weight of your responsibility settled fully upon your shoulders. The library is more than a repository of knowledge. It is a battleground of secrets, a stage for strategy, and a sanctuary for wisdom. And you, standing among the shelves, lantern-casting flickering shadows across the ancient manuscripts, are its guardian, interpreter, and executor, entrusted with a discovery that could alter the fate of the kingdom. With the dangerous manuscript secured, you realize that passive observation is no longer sufficient. Knowledge, once unearthed, demands action. The palace, with its layers of intrigue and ambition, is a delicate ecosystem, and a single misstep could unravel the balance you have spent years maintaining. The manuscript has revealed threats that are not merely theoretical, they are active, patient, and capable of exploiting the smallest oversight. You begin by reassessing every alliance you have cultivated over the years. A scholar who assists in translations is discreetly monitored, their loyalty subtly reinforced through carefully placed trust. The palace scribe, whose access to correspondence is critical, receives additional instruction, guided through innocuous tasks designed to prepare them for potential missteps without revealing the manuscript's contents. Guards are subtly repositioned along key passages, their vigilance increased, yet without raising suspicion. Every relationship, every role is evaluated for its potential impact on the unfolding situation. Next, you create contingencies. Certain manuscripts are relocated to hidden compartments. Copies of sensitive texts are made and distributed in ways that mislead potential conspirators without compromising authenticity. You leave traps within the library itself, false shelves, shifted marginalia, and coded annotations that serve as warnings or misdirections to anyone attempting to follow the conspirator's trail. The library, your domain, becomes both sanctuary and instrument, a stage where knowledge is wielded strategically. Your movements are calculated. You traverse the corridors at varying times, sometimes deliberately allowing others to see you, sometimes slipping unseen through hidden passages. Each step is an exercise in subtlety, a glance in the right direction, a whispered remark, a shadow passing silently across the walls. Even ordinary actions are transformed into strategy, reinforcing vigilance and influence without drawing attention to your true purpose. You begin to manipulate perception. Certain courtiers are given minor pieces of information, enough to satisfy curiosity but insufficient to allow understanding of the larger plot. Some are misdirected subtly, encouraged to pursue trivial research that leads nowhere. Each intervention is designed to protect the palace while testing loyalties and intentions. Through these maneuvers, you learn who may be aligned with potential threats and who can be trusted implicitly. At the same time, you exploit the manuscript itself. Its cryptic references provide clues that allow you to anticipate actions and preempt danger. Routes through the palace, Hidden compartments and coded instructions give insight into the methods and habits of potential conspirators. Every decoded phrase becomes a strategic tool, enabling you to act before the threat materializes. The library transforms into a map of both knowledge and power, each manuscript a lever that can be subtly shifted to maintain balance. Covert communication becomes essential. You establish discrete signals with trusted allies, a particular placement of a book, a subtle marking in the ledger, or a specific phrase in conversation. These signals convey warnings or instructions without revealing the full context, allowing action to be coordinated silently. Even the smallest gesture carries significance, and every interaction is measured to ensure that secrecy is maintained. You also cultivate uncertainty. Potential conspirators are given glimpses of awareness, an accidental note misplaced, a false annotation discovered, a shadow passing where none should be. These hints serve to disrupt planning, instill doubt, and slow action without revealing the full scope of your knowledge. By controlling what others perceive, you manipulate the flow of events while remaining invisible, unseen, and untouchable. Patience is as vital as strategy. You know that any rash action could expose you, endanger allies, or trigger unforeseen consequences. Each maneuver is planned over days, weeks, sometimes months. Observations are recorded meticulously in your ledger, patterns of behavior, subtle shifts in alliances, indications of preparation for action. This detailed intelligence allows you to anticipate moves, counter threats, and maintain equilibrium without ever revealing the true extent of your awareness. You also consider the human element. Ambition, fear, loyalty, and desire drive those around you, often in unpredictable ways. The manuscript reveals calculated conspiracies, but the living participants are prone to error, emotion, and improvisation. You use this knowledge to influence outcomes subtly through encouragement, suggestion, or minor intervention, guiding events toward stability without overt interference. Your role is that of unseen conductor, orchestrating responses to threats without ever being recognized as the force behind them. Some maneuvers are physical. You relocate sensitive texts, secure access points, and reinforce barriers against intrusion. Hidden panels are adjusted, false keys positioned, and security protocols quietly updated. These actions are subtle, often unnoticed by those not intimately familiar with the library, yet they ensure that the instruments of knowledge remain protected from tampering or theft. The physical environment itself becomes a silent ally in your strategy. At times, the tension is palpable. The knowledge of what could happen, the presence of active threats, and the weight of responsibility press upon you. Yet, you embrace the role with discipline, understanding that every decision, every subtle maneuver preserves not only the library, but the stability of the palace and the integrity of its history. Vigilance and foresight are your shields. Discretion and subtlety, your weapons. The covert maneuvers also serve to test your own skill. Each action, each decision provides feedback. Which strategies are effective, which relationships are reliable, which interventions succeed without exposure. You refine your methods, learning from both minor successes and near mistakes. The library becomes a laboratory of human behavior, knowledge, and strategy, and you, its principal investigator, adapt continuously to the shifting dynamics of power. Through these covert maneuvers, you achieve a delicate balance. Potential conspirators are neutralized without direct confrontation. Allies are reinforced without revealing sensitive information. And the manuscript's dangerous revelations are contained while its insights guide strategy. Knowledge, once merely observed, now actively shapes outcomes, subtly directing the flow of influence within the palace. By nightfall, the library is secure. Manuscripts are in place, contingencies established, signals reinforced, and subtle traps maintained. The palace remains unaware of the storm that has been averted, the threads of conspiracy carefully redirected, the balance preserved through silent vigilance. You, the librarian, walk the halls in quiet triumph, knowing that the invisible work you have performed will sustain the palace for days, weeks, or even years to come. In the shadows of the library, among the whispered echoes of the past and the secrets of the present, you continue your work. Every maneuver, every subtle intervention, every calculated act ensures that the palace remains intact, its history protected, and its secrets preserved. The manuscript, once a source of peril, has become a tool, a guide, and a silent testament to the power of knowledge in the hands of the careful, the patient, and the vigilant. Months pass in quiet vigilance, yet to you, each day feels measured, precise, and fraught with potential peril. The conspiracies hinted at in the dangerous manuscript, once merely shadows of possibility, now seem contained, redirected by your subtle guidance and careful orchestration. The palace functions as always, unaware of the invisible battles waged within its halls. Yet beneath the veneer of normalcy, a delicate equilibrium has been established, a triumph that no one will ever see or acknowledge. Your daily routines remain unchanged outwardly, but every action now carries weight. You move through corridors, arrange manuscripts, and confer quietly with your trusted scholar and scribe, all while monitoring the ongoing currents of influence. Each ally has been positioned, each observer quietly informed, and each potential threat subtly neutralized. The palace itself, in all its splendor and ceremony, is safeguarded by knowledge wielded with discretion and precision. The manuscript that once threatened the kingdom now guides your silent strategy. Every encoded letter, every hidden map, every marginal note has been leveraged to anticipate the movements of courtiers, guards, and envoys alike. A potential uprising is deflected by a carefully timed redirection. A misinformed minister is guided away from dangerous actions. A scholar seeking forbidden knowledge is subtly dissuaded by a strategically placed annotation. Each intervention is invisible, untraceable, yet profoundly effective. There is a quiet satisfaction in this triumph, though it is tempered by awareness. Unlike victories in open battle, yours is one of shadows and whispers, recognized only by the ledger you maintain and the silent watch you keep. The palace remains outwardly untouched, yet the invisible threads of your influence stretch across every chamber, every hallway, and every corner where knowledge might be misused. This is the triumph of subtlety, patience, and intellect, a power wielded without display or acknowledgement. Even as you consolidate this victory, you maintain vigilance. Threats do not vanish, they merely recede, waiting for lapses in attention or shifts in alliances. You continue to monitor courtiers, scholars, scribes, and guards, ensuring that every subtle maneuver remains effective. The library is both your battlefield and your sanctuary, its manuscripts tools of strategy, its shelves shields against intrusion, and its corridors channels for influence. The alliances you have nurtured over years now function seamlessly. The scholar provides insight without compromising secrecy. The scribe manages correspondence without revealing sensitive knowledge. Guards maintain security without suspicion. Each member of your covert network operates with precision, responding to subtle cues, anticipating needs, and reinforcing your strategy without understanding the full scope of the operation. This is your silent army, loyal not through awareness of power, but through carefully cultivated trust. One particularly delicate maneuver demonstrates the efficacy of your strategy. A minister, previously unaware of the true depth of a neighboring kingdom's influence, seeks access to historical treaties. You provide a carefully selected collection of texts, directing their attention toward innocuous details while preserving critical intelligence. The minister, believing they have discovered valuable insight, acts on it in ways that reinforce stability rather than threaten it. What appears as coincidence to others is, in truth, your orchestrated influence. Foreign envoys continue to arrive, yet they are no longer threats. Subtle misdirection and careful observation ensure that their intentions are either neutralized or redirected. Knowledge that could have been exploited is either withheld, encoded, or presented in ways that guide outcomes beneficially. The palace thrives, unaware of the silent negotiations, subtle interventions, and calculated decisions occurring behind closed doors in its grand library. Even the whispers of the past, long your companions, play a role in this triumph. Marginalia, hidden notes, and encoded letters provide guidance, allowing you to anticipate movements and manipulate outcomes. In essence, the library itself acts as both mentor and ally, offering lessons from centuries past to navigate present challenges. By listening to these whispers, you have turned historical knowledge into a shield against contemporary threats. The culmination of these efforts is subtle yet profound. The conspiracies revealed in the dangerous manuscript are neutralized without confrontation. The palace remains intact, unshaken by intrigue, and every potential breach of knowledge has been redirected, contained, or concealed. Your triumph is silent because its value lies in preservation rather than recognition. Unlike warriors or ministers, you do not claim accolades or titles. Your victory is measured not in public celebration, but in the ongoing stability, security, and order of the palace. There is, however, a quiet danger in such triumph. Awareness of the manuscript's revelations, the manipulations of influence, and the weight of responsibility bears heavily. You must remain vigilant, never complacent, and constantly reevaluate alliances, contingencies, and potential threats. The palace may appear calm, but history, ambition, and human error are ever-present forces, ready to disrupt equilibrium at the slightest lapse. Despite this, a sense of fulfillment emerges. You have demonstrated the power of intellect, discretion, and strategy, leveraging knowledge to protect, guide, and influence without ever being seen. The library, once merely a repository of manuscripts, has become a dynamic arena where the past, present, and future intersect, and you, its librarian, are the unseen force orchestrating its outcomes. As the sun sets and the palace settles into evening routines, you walk the aisles of the library with quiet pride. Lanterns illuminate the spines of ancient texts, casting long shadows that stretch across the floor. Each volume, carefully preserved and strategically positioned, represents a victory in your silent struggle. Each marginal note, hidden letter, and encoded manuscript is a testament to vigilance, patience, and wisdom. You close the ledger, confident that the palace will endure another day, another season, untroubled by the threats that once loomed. The conspiracies remain neutralized, the alliances strengthened, and the delicate equilibrium maintained. Your triumph is invisible, unheralded, yet absolute, a testament to the power of knowledge wielded with discretion and foresight. In these quiet moments, you recognize the true nature of your role. You are not merely a librarian or a caretaker of books. You are guardian, strategist, historian, and unseen arbiter of power. Your influence, though silent, shapes the palace, preserves its stability, and ensures that the wisdom of the ages continues to serve the present. Your triumph is the culmination of years of careful observation, covert action, and subtle orchestration, a silent victory that echoes through every corridor, every manuscript, and every whisper of the past. And as night falls over the palace, the library rests in tranquil order, its treasures secure, its knowledge protected, and its unseen guardian vigilant. The triumph is complete, yet ongoing, a perpetual balance of observation, strategy, and influence, maintained by your unwavering dedication and unparalleled skill. Years have passed, yet the library remains as it always was, a sanctuary of knowledge, a repository of history, and a silent guardian of the palace's secrets. You walk its aisles with the same deliberate pace, the same careful touch, and the same unyielding vigilance that has defined your life. The manuscripts remain in pristine order, the hidden compartments undisturbed, and the once dangerous conspiracies now merely whispers of history carefully contained. Yet you know the true weight of your work lies not in the present, but in the legacy you leave behind. The concept of legacy is subtle, often misunderstood. Unlike kings or generals whose deeds are sung in verse or etched in stone, your triumphs have been silent, invisible to all but a few trusted allies in the pages of your ledger, yet they endure. The stability of the palace, the preservation of knowledge, and the careful orchestration of events over decades are the fruits of your labor. Each manuscript preserved, each alliance nurtured, each covert maneuver executed, all these create a chain of influence that will outlast your tenure, shaping the kingdom's future without recognition or accolade. You pause at a familiar shelf, running your fingers along the spines of volumes both ancient and modern. Each one tells a story, not just of history, but of your careful stewardship. There are texts that might have caused chaos if misused, maps that reveal secret routes, letters that document centuries of intrigue, all preserved and protected under your watchful eye. You reflect on the responsibility that this entails. Knowledge is not neutral. It can empower, destroy, or transform, depending on who wields it. and in your hands it has been wielded with precision, discretion, and wisdom. Your ledger, once a tool of daily strategy, has grown into a historical record itself. It chronicles not only the events of the palace, but also your interventions, observations, and analyses. Future librarians who discover it will understand the depth of planning, vigilance, and intellect required to maintain the balance of knowledge and power. In essence, your legacy is twofold: the preserved manuscripts themselves and the invisible strategies that ensured their safety. Together they form a blueprint for future guardians, a silent inheritance of wisdom and vigilance. Alliances you cultivated continue to bear fruit. Scholars once trained under your guidance now operate independently, carrying forward principles of discretion and loyalty. Scribes you mentored maintain the flow of correspondence with an awareness shaped by subtle influence. Even guards, once solely trained to protect passages and hidden chambers, continue their duties with an intuitive understanding of their importance. The effects of your guidance ripple outward, touching every corner of the palace, even as you step back into the quiet shadows of your role. You reflect on the dangerous manuscript that first revealed a threat to the kingdom. Once a source of fear, it has now become emblematic of the wisdom required to navigate history's complexity. The conspiracies it contained have been neutralized, yet the lessons remain. Vigilance, patience, strategy, and subtlety are paramount. Knowledge must be understood, interpreted, and, when necessary, guided into safe channels. The manuscript, once a harbinger of chaos, has become a symbol of your enduring influence. In quieter moments, you think of the palace itself, not merely as a building of stone and marble, but as a living organism sustained by order, discipline, and knowledge. Every decision, subtle maneuver, and strategic intervention contributes to its stability. You have moved through this organism with care, understanding that even the smallest misstep could cascade into disaster. Your legacy is embedded not in monuments or public memory, but in the very functioning of the palace, in the continued balance of power and preservation of history. The library also reflects your understanding of human nature. Every action you took considered ambition, fear, loyalty, and curiosity. You learn that knowledge is both a weapon and a shield, a gift and a burden, a tool for guidance and a source of temptation. The wisdom to wield it appropriately is not innate. It is cultivated through observation, reflection, and careful management of both people and information. Your legacy is thus as much ethical as it is practical a guide for future stewards of knowledge on the responsible use of power. You take a moment to consider mortality and memory. Though your name may never be spoken beyond these walls, though no statue will bear your likeness, the consequences of your actions endure. Generations of scholars, courtiers, and rulers will benefit from the stability you maintained, the knowledge you preserved, and the careful orchestration of events that prevented disaster. This is the quiet triumph of a life spent in service to history and human understanding. Impact without recognition, influence without fanfare. In your reflection, there is also a subtle joy. The mastery of strategy, the careful orchestration of alliances, and the safeguarding of knowledge have not been tasks alone, they have been a life's purpose. Every challenge met, every threat mitigated, every secret preserved has affirmed your role as guardian and strategist. You have learned that the value of knowledge lies not merely in possession, but in understanding, discernment, and the responsibility to protect it from misuse. Even as you age, your vigilance remains unwavering. You continue to walk the halls of the library, inspect manuscripts, observe courtiers, and guide scholars. Each day reinforces the permanence of your legacy, knowledge preserved, palace stability maintained, and history honored. You understand that this is not a finite task. It is perpetual. Every generation will present new challenges, yet the principles you have instilled, the systems you have created, and the strategies you have implemented provide a foundation for enduring protection. As twilight falls, casting long shadows across the library shelves, you pause to appreciate the full scope of your work. The manuscripts stand untouched by ambition or malice. Alliances continue to function with subtle effectiveness. The palace operates with stability, and the echoes of conspiracies past serve only as lessons. Your life's work is complete, not in recognition, but in impact, a living testament to the power of vigilance, wisdom, and discretion. Finally, you return the dangerous manuscript to its hidden compartment, ensuring its secrets remain contained, yet available for careful study when necessary. It is a symbol of your enduring influence, a reminder of the balance between knowledge and power, and a cornerstone of your legacy. Every shelf, every manuscript, every marginal note, and every ledger entry now stands as a monument to careful stewardship, strategic foresight, and ethical responsibility. You extinguish the lanterns, leaving the library bathed in the soft glow of evening moonlight. The palace sleeps, untroubled, unaware of the silent triumphs and subtle maneuvers that sustain its stability. You, the librarian, remain its vigilant guardian, your legacy etched not in stone, but in the enduring security of knowledge and the quiet harmony of history preserved. And so the librarian's life concludes not with accolades or fame, but with the certainty that centuries of wisdom, careful strategy, and vigilant guardianship will continue to shape the palace and its people long after your footsteps no longer echo through its hallowed halls. Knowledge endures, secrets remain protected, and the legacy of the silent guardian lives on unseen, uncelebrated, but profoundly enduring.